homer, led the league in tackles with 85. The deep ball for Darius Prince, and Philadelphia is on the board first.
On the draw, this is Bryson Allen. And Allen weaving his way all the way down to the 22.
10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, dancing all around. Throwing as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver, you're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder, but watch. Oh, those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
All right, we're back with another episode of Around the Indoor Football World, and we've got quite a few different subjects to cover today, including some big news out of the NAL and AIF, another CBS sports deal for an arena football league, and then also a lot of big name transactions going on in the IFL currently, getting prepared for that playoff run. But first, let me introduce my co-host. I am with Ducon, the man behind Zio Productions, also known as Arena Football Statement. Ducon, how are you doing this morning?
Doing great, Sam. How are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to talking about some arena football. As always, you know, Saturday mornings, it's kind of become our ritual for the past couple seasons, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sure has been. Thanks for having me along.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. As I always tell you, I mean, I'm constantly amazed by your knowledge. You and Krish blow me away every week, and I feel like I'm just kind of here to press some buttons and let you guys talk sometimes, but that's perfectly okay. You know, I love being surrounded by knowledgeable people, so I feel like I learn something every time I talk to you guys, so it's fun for sure.
Thank you.
There will be another guy with us today. His name's TJ. He's kind of going to be joining us for the future and kind of fitting in where we can get him in on some shows, and he'll be giving us his 2 cents. He's a former arena football coach. Looks like we're having a couple issues with him at the moment, but we'll get him back on as soon as we can. But let's go ahead and jump into the big news at hand with the AIF and NAL. And I've kind of been teasing this. Oh, we got TJ back. TJ, how you doing this morning? And give us a little bit of a background on you and why you're here this morning, or why you wanted to be here this morning.
I've been a fan of the game for a long time, and I've also spent a couple years on different coaching rosters. Was humbled enough to be a part of 2 championships, and I just love the sport and love talking about it. And thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
Oh, the honor is all ours as well. I mean, looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more, TJ, and then also learning more, because like I said, part of this is bringing on people that know their stuff, so all of us can learn a little bit.
Absolutely. There we go.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. But the big news at hand today for the NAL and AIF is that, per a couple sources that are very close to the situation, it sounds like the NAL and AIF merger is trucking right along. It sounds like it's probably coming very soon, and that we're going to get a much larger NAL for the 2024 or 2025 season. I apologize. And at this point, it sounds like they're almost double what they ended the season with, which is impressive to say the least, given that we're only a month away from the championship game, not even. And they're already growing in this manner. Ducon, when you look at the indoor football scene and you look at, the potential of the AIF and the NAL coming together, how do you think that affects the sport as a whole and the landscape of all these leagues that we've had, over the past couple seasons?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. How does it affect the landscape and the industry as a whole? I think it's a good thing. I really think it's a good thing. The first obvious thing I would mention is that the biggest complaint I get of new fans coming into the industry is that how do we keep up with all these leagues? There's so many little 3-letter acronyms and stuff, and we can't possibly keep up with all of it. And if this merger does go through, I think that's great for the industry. Absolutely great. That's one less league. It solidifies another league even more, and especially helps their geographical footprint. It spells longevity for the teams involved because you get a lot closer playing partners, cutting down on travel. There's a lot of stability when you get into a number of teams, because even when one team struggles, there's a lot of other teams that are like, hey, we want to see the league succeed, that we're willing to pitch in some money to help a team out financially. So it's the whole adage of, you take a stick and you break it, it's going to snap easy, but if you take a bundle of sticks and you try to snap it and hit it on your knee, it's going to break your knee. And that's kind of what one of the benefits of something like this is, that if you get a lot of like-minded people bringing in quality organizations, then you're going to be a pretty solid league. And if it continues on this trend, the NAL could be in the same discussion as the IFL in a few years. But that we have yet to see that, of course. But it looks like a step in the right direction if it goes through.
I would completely agree. I mean, honestly, I think that these teams being able to set ego aside and make this work in the long run will be great for both entities. I don't want to say like the AIF is going away, because they aren't technically. It's just growing by joining the NAL. So TJ, we'll go to you. I want to get your opinion on this. Obviously, this is kind of a big thing that can really reshape the way we know indoor football right now. So what's your opinion on this move?
I fully agree with what's already been said. That's the main concern or issue with a lot of people, is it's so muddied of a sport where there's so many different leagues. So anytime two leagues can merge together and make a better league, that's good for the sport, especially where you consider where the NAL's been the last year or two, as opposed to, if this does go through sometime this week, it completely strengthens the NAL to the point where they probably have never been before, honestly.
Yeah, good point.
That is a good point. I mean, honestly, the past couple of years have been rough for the NAL, as we all know. It seems like both, it was 22 and 23, they both ended with 5 teams left over, or 23 and 24, I apologize. They ended with 5 teams left over from both seasons, and ultimately watched a lot of turnover, with the teams mid-season over the past couple seasons. But this seems different. This isn't adding a bunch of expansion teams. This isn't adding a bunch of teams that have not played football or haven't shown a proof of concept. You're bringing in teams that played legitimate games this season. Columbus, getting them back is huge. I think that's honestly going to be great for this league. You get a playing partner for Carolina, so which is huge, because obviously their travel bill was outrageous this season. And, any more of those East Coast teams you can bring in, it only makes it easier on Carolina. So, you keep one of your staple franchises afloat for the long term, which I think is great as well. And I think, honestly, it's like you guys said, it's only going to be better off for the NAL going forward now that they have some stable franchises they're bringing in. And then, the other teams around them, maybe not established, will have that assistance.
Yeah, agreed.
But I'm curious. I mean, when you look at sorry, let me back up a step. So basically right now what I have for information, and I'm not going to obviously put any names on who gave me this, but right now it sounds like the Harrisburg Stampede, the Columbus Lions, and the Corpus Christi Tritons will be added. The Amarillo Venom is still up in the air, and I believe the Beaumont Renegades, same thing. When you look at the fact that those two teams haven't quite been confirmed yet, do you have any idea what may have caused a delay in there?
My answer on that would be that both teams, speaking of Amarillo and Beaumont, either want to go a different direction than the rest of the league in a potential merger. And I think that could be the first thing that would make them have a little bit of hesitancy, commitment wise. Do we want to commit to this? And I think that the delay is we need more time to figure this out, and probably explore, I guess, a league that doesn't have such a big geographical footprint. Again, if Beaumont and Amarillo are having discussions with each other, both being Texas teams, they probably are like, well, we could probably, make this a lot more budget friendly if we didn't go national. So I can see that conversation being something that would potentially delay it. But the other part of it could be the AIF may be interested in the NAL, but the NAL looks at Beaumont and Amarillo and says, no, they don't meet our standard. And so those are a couple possibilities that immediately come to mind. Now, I don't know either situation right now, but they both seem fluid.
No, that's completely fair. I mean, honestly, I don't think anybody that I know of has really heard much from Amarillo as far as what they're going to be doing in the future yet. TJ, when you look at the overall scope of this merger and what we know about it so far, do you think that this is a situation where the NAL is probably, taking a step back and given a little bit of hesitancy towards Beaumont, which is a new franchise, and towards Amarillo, which had a little bit of issues there at the end of the season?
Absolutely, especially again, like we said, with their struggles with keeping teams active and carrying over to the following season. They're supposedly, from what I've heard anyway, their standard in bringing in new teams has risen greatly because of, well, basically the whole AB and Albany situation. So that might be one of the key factors for them. It may also be simply operation costs joining the merger. It might be, they might not be ironed out yet, and they might want to see just to make sure, they don't get in too fast,
Yeah.
Completely agree. And I mean, honestly, I can see a little bit of hesitancy with Beaumont. I want to believe that they're going to be a great franchise, and I hope that they've got everything in place. But, we always got to, ask the right questions when it comes to a new franchise, especially after what's happened the past couple seasons with, Fayetteville and like you said, the AB situation in Albany and, a couple other situations that have come up and gone away, North Texas, perhaps. So definitely some interesting decisions to be made for the NAL side. Also, one more subject I wanted to touch on is the fact that I'm hearing that there is a 10th team, which has already been approved. I don't know much about this team. I know that they're a new team. They have not played a game as of yet, and that they're deciding between potentially as many as 3 or 4 markets. So I'm very interested to see who this could potentially be, who the ownership group is, what the team ends up looking like. But I mean, if NAL is already back at 10 teams, more that they started the 2023 season with, kudos to them. I don't know how they managed it, but they've done an amazing job to rebuild this league from what, it ended the 2024 season with. And they've been the butt of a lot of jokes this season due to the fact that everything has happened. And for them to be able to turn it around this quickly, I just wanted to commend them on their efforts to be able to bring in these many ownership groups this quickly.
Absolutely. I talk to Todd Walkenhorst kind of regularly. He's doing a great job as a commissioner. He understands just about everything that a commissioner needs to understand. He's got a lot of experience, and what he kept telling me is we just needed to have a foundational year, because of the great overhaul from last season to this season. Of course, all the teams split, and you have just the Carolina Cobras left over, and then you have Omaha, Sioux City, and a couple others come in. His biggest thing was, let's get through the season. Let's lay a foundation and set a standard of what we're trying to do. And he was pretty pleased that they were able to do that, and that he ended with the 5 teams that he did. And he was very confident that now that we've got this foundation established, there's so much upside to this. And he says, yeah, we'll definitely have at least 8 teams. He says, but we could have as many as 12 going into 2025. And that's a pretty big jump. Again, the National Arena League, most people, when you look at social media posts and comments on social media, we're just saying, just fold already. Just fold already. We need less leagues anyway. Be done, NAL, And now we're looking at the second year with this new tenure being the time when they have the most teams the National Arena League has ever had. And that's quite something. That's quite a turnaround, to be honest with you. Now, this other team that you mentioned, brand new team, everything I say is absolutely speculation here, but I know that it was a huge goal to get Idaho some help, because if there's a merger happening, then Carolina gets some help in the travel, and that's great. That's absolutely great, especially with the Wheeling Miners coming in. But you got to solidify the Northwest, because Idaho is over there on an island as well, and they are another team that suffered very, very much from very expensive travel. And I know that it was a big priority of Mr. Todd Walkenhorst and the rest of the NAL to try to find some playing partners for Idaho in the Northwest.
Absolutely, I would agree. And TJ, I want to get your opinion on a specific kind of thought process here. But you look at the NAL over the past 2 seasons, and they've gone about growing this league in an interesting manner, in my personal opinion, because last season it was you go and get Idaho from the AWFC, established team. Chris Reynolds was basically responsible for launching the AWFC. That's an ownership group you want to have. He's financially capable of running a football team, right? Then you go out this season, you go get Wheeling, you go bring in these 3 AIF teams, you look at the other 2 AIF teams. When you look at the way they've expanded, have you ever seen anything quite like this? And do you think that that breeds more continuity among this league going forward, or is it a situation where we might see some of these teams come in and fade out or drop off or not be up to the NAL standards?
Well, we've seen both the NAL and other leagues expand like this in the past, and usually when it happens, it's like how many teams are going to make it to the end of the season. But it seems like they're really vetting and taking their time with new teams to make sure, like you said, they are established and they can, front the bill essentially for a whole season without having to fold mid-season. So I think I agree with you guys. This is probably the best look the NAL's probably ever had. And hopefully this is a step in the right direction, because I believe it was in year 2 or 3 of the NAL, there was actually murmurs about, are they starting to get to the level of the IFL? And then they had the fall off. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make the climb back up into good graces with fans.
Good point. Very good points.
That's a good point for sure. Honestly, I think that I don't want to say ownership group, but the leadership group that's in place now in the NAL is they've got big dreams, and honestly, I love it, because I think they're the group that can actually accomplish it. They're not trying to go out and inflate to 16 teams overnight, although we never know. You get a couple of these teams in, and all of a sudden you have a 10-team NAL, and you're pitching teams on coming in, and you might see 3 Kansas teams make the jump over, and all of a sudden you have 13, and then how does that affect other teams from the AFL's decision making and stuff like that? So you never know. This could swing a whole different way that none of us even saw coming. It just depends on how they approach it the rest of the off season. So I think we're in for another. Yeah, exactly. I think we're in for another very interesting off season, and this is only the beginning. So it's been a lot of fun already. But I wanted to go ahead and move on to our next subject at hand, which is actually the the AFL CBS partnership. So I know a lot of people were kind of caught off guard when it was announced that the playoffs would be on the TV, on television broadcast. And now we know that it's CBS Sports. We've got one game in the books, so we even know what the broadcast looked like. By the way, I thought it was amazing. So I'm curious, I mean, what is your guys' opinions? If you could rate the new leadership group for the AFL that took over after week 4, what would it be? Let's go to TJ first.
I'd say fantastic, because they're here. And it did not look like they were going to make it past probably mid-season for a little bit there. Jeff Fisher's come in. They've added other new pieces, like bringing back Jerry Kurz. They're making a lot of steps in the right direction. And what I like is every interview that they've had since the new regime took over is they're looking forward to the playoffs and this championship game and into next season. That shows that you have like we were saying before about the NAL, the right core ownership groups and the right core people that want to keep this thing going. They didn't just throw in the towel when things got tough. So I think that's a good look for the AFL. And as far as the broadcast, I love Ari Wolf. So I had a good time watching the game last night.
What did you think about the co-host? I'm probably going to forget his last name, but it's Brett Musburger, correct?
Muncie,
my fault.
Yeah.
What did you think about his additions to the broadcast?
Well, you know what? Truth be told, growing up, I was a Soul fan, so I'm a little biased on it. But I think he did good. I thought he brought in some good insight. Definitely went over some more in-depth play knowledge and lingo for the fans at home. And I thought it was overall a really good broadcast. And Randy Hibbert, man, he's come back the last 2 games after a 5-year break. He's lighting it up.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to see the 2 quarterbacks that are really standing apart in this league are guys who were out of football for a while. Jake Medlock up there in Albany, and then you also look at Randy Hibbert with Nashville. They're both kind of tearing it up. But Dukan, I'm curious about your opinion. I mean, obviously, this season started with rumors that it was going to be on NFL Network, and technically that was, in fact, true. If everybody had lived up to their promises, it would have happened. But, as we know, that fell apart. And now, out of the blue, basically, here comes CBS Sports for the playoffs. Was it a surprise to you to hear that announcement?
No, not at all. So in answer to your first question that you asked, TJ, was I don't remember how you worded it, but it was well worded. Sam, it was a well worded question. I was going to mention the difference between the regime that the AFL started with to what they have now, the leadership group you had mentioned. And it's a night and day difference. And the biggest difference that I've noticed is the new regime doesn't just get on podcasts and talk about what they're doing. They talk about what they're doing by actually making the announcement of what they did. And that's the difference. Nobody said anything about a CBS Sports deal coming until it was done. And that's the difference. Hutton and Gaines and these guys, they talked a lot about what they were doing, and there wasn't a lot getting done. And so that's why, so to me, that's while it was such a big failure, and the 8 teams that have ceased operations, etc., the ones that weren't league owned, their ownership groups all said the same thing. This is a result of unfulfilled promises. Now, it's pretty clear that G6 Sports has money. I know that kind of a little bit of how these deals go, especially with CBS Sports, because of some visits that I've had with Todd Tryon and in the IFL's dealings with CBS Sports, that they're not getting it for free. The AFL's not getting this for free. They have to pay to do this. However, it is a great advertising tool for the AFL going forward, like a fantastic advertising tool. For somebody to be just kind of browsing along, coming along and seeing a good quality broadcast. And I've got to say that, Orlando, with all of their shortcomings, it looked like true arena football last night. I mean, like TJ said, hearing Ari Wolf and seeing the net set up, it looked beautiful. I mean, it was a great look for the AFL. And the biggest thing is that if they can get it looking that good going forward, I can see CBS Sports sweetening the deal for the AFL, saying, hey, let's talk about doing something all season long. Let's talk about a long-term partnership here. So no, it didn't surprise me, because I think that the AFL was specifically trying to get somebody like this that could air their games and advertise for their league going forward. Now that they've got a good leadership group in place, now that they've got their final 6 teams now down to 5 or whatever for the playoffs that are pretty solid teams, then I think it's a good look right now for it to be on national TV. Whereas before it wasn't a good look. It didn't make sense for it to be on national TV. And I think that's why the NFL Network was like, no, thanks.
Yeah, I think that had a huge part in it. And then also, obviously, if you can't pay your broadcasting bills, that's a huge issue as well, which, as we know, there wasn't, if there was money at the time, there wasn't much. So, it wasn't even being distributed to the franchises to keep them afloat. Which that is one complaint about this new leadership group from teams that have since folded. That the money wasn't distributed, at least according to West Texas's owner. I forget his last name, Zach. But
Bug.
Thank you, Zach Bug. I was going to say that, but it didn't sound right for some reason. So yeah. Anyway, I think this is a big deal, and I wanted to point out the fact and reiterate the fact that this is 2 different leadership groups. You're talking about literally the Lee Hutton and Travell Gaines era was a disaster. It was literally the hallmark of their era will be always unfulfilled promises. Dreaming big and then delivering very little, and that's exactly what happened. And now we have a situation where Jeff Fisher and the people that have come in and taken over have done a very good job of reorganizing this league overnight, on the fly, and doing everything they needed to keep it alive. You can sit here and debate whether or not they made the right decisions in some situations. That's perfectly okay. I'm not here to say that they've done everything perfect. But at the same time, for you guys, or for anyone to say that the AFL is now a joke as opposed to when they started the season, I don't think is fair, because you're not divvying up the credit and the due where it belongs. If you look at what the new group has done in a very short amount of time, I feel like it's monumental when you really think about it. They essentially rebuilt the league overnight. They went from not having a TV deal to having a TV deal, and it's taken other leagues 10 plus years to get to that situation. So in my eyes, this is a win for arena football. This is a win for the AFL. And especially after last night, seeing the broadcast, if it looks like that every single game, we're in good shape. And I think that we might see more arena football on broadcast television going forward. CBS Sports is the same network that houses the IFL championship game and has had talks about adding more IFL games to broadcast TV. So if AFL draws, that's only more reason for them to promote the IFL as well, because it's indoor football as well. To them, it's very similar. So, I really think that this is good for every league. And it's kind of funny to say that, but we could see a scenario where we see IFL and AFL coexist on CBS Sports next season. So it could be very interesting going forward on that aspect as well.
Yeah, good points all the way around.
Any other AFL topics? I mean, other than the fact that Nashville looks dangerous after last night, you guys want to get to before we get to the IFL? TJ, any thoughts?
Just that it's going to be a heck of a playoffs for them, I think. Especially with how Nashville did last night, with how Billings has played all season. It's going to be, there's going to be some fun matchups, and like you said, it would be great if the overall reception is we want more, and next season they can expand, maybe even with both leagues, like you said, have a full arena football weekend, arena and indoor weekend during the summer. That's like every one of our fans dream. So that'd be awesome if it did come to fruition.
I definitely agree, and honestly, that could be a very realistic possibility coming soon.
Yeah, I was going to also mention just before we move on from the AFL, the current leadership inherited a mess, an absolute mess. And I agree with you, Sam. The turnaround mid-season that they've been able to do so far with all the new people that they've brought in, and the solidifying they've done with basically the pieces that they had left, is quite an impressive feat, in my opinion. It will be very interesting to see what their standards are going into the off season, and just basically, are they going to be the type of league that's just looking for really high budget teams, huge markets, and are they going to be interested only in these big markets coming in? And what happens with your Kansas teams? What happens with a Washington Wolfpack? You know, there's those lingering questions that I have going forward. But I would just have to say, very impressive job by the new leadership, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the AFL has done a good job, like you said, with the high budget markets. I'm trying to think of what markets like that are out there. Is Amarillo, do we consider that a high budget market, or is that kind of a medium budget market? Yeah. So it's like you have to kind of decipher what a big market is before you kind of bring it in. And I feel like a lot of those big markets are in the IFL, right? Like Tulsa, Indiana coming in. You might have to create a new market. You know, you might have to go out and find, I think Wisconsin would be a great market. I think there's a lot of cities in Wisconsin that would be amazing. Milwaukee, I hope they bring a team back to Milwaukee. So there's a couple like areas and cities that I really hope they explore. And I mean, Idaho, what if you brought Idaho in? You know, I know Idaho is a small budget market, but it could give Washington and Oregon, like you said earlier, like playing partners in that area. So, you know, I feel like now if you're a team out there, you need to go to what league best regionally suits you. You know, there's a reason why we're in the IFL. It's because the level of competition is the best right now. But if it weren't, we would be in the NAL probably still, right? Because it saves a ton of money to be able to just travel close by. I mean, look, I think they need more Florida teams. They need to put another team in Tampa Bay. They need to bring a team to Fort Lauderdale. They need to start exploring more cities and just going back to markets that haven't been working, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
No, and then I think that's about it for the AFL. You know, I'm excited for the playoffs. I think being on CBS Sports is amazing. I think it gives the league really good exposure that they need. You know, it shows like, and then they had Ari Wolf calling the game, like the legendary broadcaster back. And you know, I didn't really get a chance to listen to him much, but being able to listen to him last night, it showed me why people love him, and like he's so knowledgeable about the game. And I think that's what we need, is bring people who actually know the game back into the fold. And I hope we see that with coaches too in the AFL. I hope they weave out all these semi-pro, like indoor, non-AFL knowing coaches, and bring coaches that actually know the arena game, like Dean Coquinos and others. So that's one of my hopes for the league. But we can move on to the IFL.
We're going to grandma's house. Let's go. We're late. Let's go.
know, my love, I need you so. Where we belong together. When you're by my side, you know I feel alright, 'cause we belong together. Da, 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 da. We belong together.
At Sam's Club, you'll find the food, decor, and surprises to make the holidays merry. All you need to make it merrier is each other. Sam's Club, let's get together.
All right, sorry about that, guys. I am back. And we are back to talk some more IFL action for the rest of this episode. And Cody in the alley has joined us to discuss his favorite league. Cody, how you doing this morning?
Doing all right. Just getting ready for week 17 action and more playoff pushes for certain teams.
Absolutely. There's some huge games to talk about this weekend. Some very, very important games when you talk about playoff implications as well. So let's jump in right there. I mean, why don't we talk about some of these matchups coming up this weekend that could affect that playoff picture? Games like Massachusetts versus San Antonio, Vegas versus San Diego, NAS versus Bay Area. When you look at some of these teams, some of these games, Cody, which is your game of the week for this week?
I think the obvious one probably needs to be Vegas and San Diego.
Yeah.
That one's probably going to be the one that really kind of shapes the West. Other than that, I mean, excuse me. Other than that, I mean, Northern Arizona's game is probably going to be kind of crucial as well. If Bay Area can get that victory, then they have pretty much the inside track at the 1 seed. So all of the Western games are the ones that are probably going to take precedent. I am looking at the Massachusetts game. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. I am looking at the Massachusetts game just because that game intrigues me so much because I don't really have any insight to it. I don't know which side's going to prevail.
That's a fair point. That is a very up in the air game. So let's go to Ducon next. When you look at the scheme this week, which is your game of the week?
I agree with Cody. I really think it's the Vegas at San Diego, and what he said about it shaping the West. I think he's hitting it right on the head. When you look at a team like Vegas, they start out 7-0. They've gone 2-4 in their last 6. But when you look at their losses, 2 of them are overtime losses, and the other 2 are just really, really close matchups. I mean, the last one is a missed field goal at the end of the game that could have beat Bay Area. They're just right there. Vegas is right there, and for whatever reason they've hit this skid, but they're a solid team. San Diego's playing some great football. I think that's honestly going to be the game of the week. When you look at the last time they played each other, San Diego was in Vegas. It was a 68-64 win for Vegas in that game. Very, very close. It got chippy at the end. Both of these teams are just incredibly well matched. And I honestly, before anything started this week, I circled that game as my game of the week.
Fair enough. We've actually been spending a lot of time talking about the betting odds on this one off the camera, so we'll get to that in just a sec. TJ, what is your thought on game of the week this week in the IFL?
I'm going to make it 3 for 3. It's definitely Vegas and San Diego, just because they both go in with the exact same scenario where if they win and either Arizona or Northern Arizona loses, they clinch a playoff spot. So both teams are kind of going in with this with kind of a mentality of this is like a playoff game. We win, and again, like it's already been said, even if both Arizona and Northern Arizona win, it still would give either team really the inside track against the other one, especially on Vegas' side, because they would still have a shot then at the number 1 seed.
Yes, agreed.
That's a good point. And that is another subject that we'll get to here shortly. So Cody, you had some concern, or not some concerns, I guess that's a bad word for it, but you had some qualms about the betting odds for this game. So I'm curious, let's go ahead and kind of rehash that on camera for our viewers.
Yeah, so when I was looking, my goodness, when I was looking at the betting odds, I saw that San Diego was favored by I think 3 with money line juice to them, and I cannot remember the over under off the top of my head. And it got me thinking. I'm like, it's not just because of the record, because I mean the records are all similar, but I'm like, how is Vegas an underdog in this situation? Well, lo and behold, the transactions come out, and I don't know why my brain memory hold Caleb Hawley going down. I don't know the extent of the injury, but he's on season injured reserve. They got rid of Jonathan Johnson, Kareem Taylor, Justin Collins. That is a lot of offensive firepower. They've signed some guys. They've signed Trayvon Van, who played for San Diego, so maybe there's some inside intel that he's able to disperse among the team. But I don't know. You're going in with 2 wide receivers that are probably a little raw, and maybe that's the reason why they're swaying it. At first, I thought it was just home field advantage, but you look at San Diego's defense, they have been pretty stout all season. Not obviously world beaters or the best in the indoor football league, but good enough to get the job done and get them to the record that they're at right now. So I understand why the odds are what they are, but I figured the odds would probably be -1 +1, not a field goal. So I was expecting it to be a little bit closer, but hey, they're giving home field advantage to San Diego.
Can I jump in here for a second on that?
Absolutely, please do.
I think Cody makes some really, really good points. That transactions being one of the things that would affect the money line on this. But the other thing that I think affects of it is the old adage, "What have you done for me lately?" And that's where we got Vegas, who's 2-4 in their last 6, but San Diego has won their last 3, and 2 of them are road victories where they beat Bay Area, and then they turn around and beat NAS by 2 touchdowns last week in Northern Arizona. And so you look at that and you're saying, okay, San Diego's hot right now. Vegas is still trying to find their identity.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it 3 straight?
It's 3. Yeah, they've won 3 straight. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, impressive run by San Diego. So definitely understand that they're kind of getting a little bit of a benefit from their recency bias. Krish, when you look at this week, what is your game of the week, buddy?
My game of the week is Northern Arizona and Bay Area. I think Bay Area can clinch number 1, and Northern Arizona can clinch a playoff spot. So it's a lot on the line, and I think Northern Arizona, they have a lot to play for. So I'm excited to watch that one. That's my game of the week for sure.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And on that note, I would be remiss if I did not mention that our hearts go out to the NAS community, the family of Coach Moran, who passed away recently. He was a member of the NAS Wranglers, as far as I know, much beloved out there. So our hearts go out to his family, his friends, the whole NAS community, because that's a terrible situation. You never want to see anything like that unfold, and it's been great to see all the different teams send their support to NAS and all their fans and their family, because that's sometimes things are bigger than sports, and this is one of those things. So again, our heart goes out to the family, and it's just an incredibly sad situation.
Absolutely.
Definitely think that's going to be a great game, and could be a situation where, if NAS clinches a playoff berth here, it could really uplift the franchise, given what they're going through right now. So that could be a huge game for them. I think this Massachusetts and San Antonio game is a very sneaky good game this weekend. Obviously, Tom Manoff and San Antonio's coaching staff is not going to take well to missing the playoffs in their first season in the IFL. They could probably deal with the fact if they get bumped from the playoffs, but not making it, they're going to be pretty upset about. But here's the thing. They're on the outside looking in the West in a very dramatic fashion, and there's a good chance that they cannot make the playoffs despite what happens today. But Massachusetts on the other side is slipping down those rankings real quick. At one point they stood atop the East, and now they're 8-6 in third place. Quad City's only 2 games back from them. So if they lose today and Quad City beats Sioux Falls, which I think we all more or less expect to happen, that could also affect the playoff seeding quite a bit, moving forward. So that interesting game in my mind as well. Any
Yes.
thoughts on these games before we move on to some transaction news?
Yeah, I was going to mention that it's kind of interesting when you look at the Western and the Eastern Conference. You've got Quad City at 6 and 7, that's at the 4 seed, and you've got San Antonio that's 6 and 7, but they're a 6 seed in their conference. It just kind of shows you how lopsided the Eastern Conference is compared to how much the parity's pretty equal in the Western Conference.
That's a great point, and that's actually something I wanted to pose to you guys, and I forgot to write it in my notes. Do you think, when you look at the conference setup right now, do you think it's set up in a manner where the best teams are making it to the playoffs? Or are we missing out because a team like NAS or, potentially Arizona or, one of these other teams might miss the playoffs on the Western side while we see, say, a Quad City make the playoffs on the East side?
You muted for a second. Did you call out somebody?
Let's go to Ducon first.
Okay, yeah, I was going to jump in and just say that don't hate me for this, Krish, but when you look at NAS and San Antonio at the 5 and 6 seed, you put them in the Eastern Conference. I think that they take the 3 and 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, and teams like Mass and Quad City miss the playoffs. Because it's just the Western Conference teams, they're just that good. And if you look at San Antonio's record, they're 6 of their 7 losses are their Western Conference, But if you look at a team like Green Bay, they're sitting at 11 and 3, I think it is. All 14 of their games are Eastern Conference opponents. And you wonder what their record would look like if they had a few Western Conference opponents in there.
Definitely agree. Chris, do you have any comments on that and how, the playoff seeding might be changed if conference weren't taken into effect?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. So, we played Quad City Monday night, and I was really, really underimpressed with how Quad City looked. Like, that did not look like the playoff team to me by any stretch that matters. So, when you say that, I completely agree with you. San Antonio, they're a really good team, right? Their offense is really good. Coach Manasseh's defense can't stop a dying chicken. So, if you look at it like that, it's like it kind of makes sense why they're 6 and 7, right? Their offense is number 1 in the league. Coach Fuller and his unit, 53 points a game. Like, the defense would still get cooked in the Eastern Conference. They played Frisco 3 times. They went 1 and 2 against them. So our offense tonight, I think, against them kind of has to slow the game down a lot. We kind of have to control tempo because last game we didn't. But I feel that the Western Conference, no one is arguing. The Western Conference is better than the Eastern Conference. I'm not going to lie. Like, no one can argue that. But I think next year, I think the IFL should do the top 8 teams. I'm not opposed to that, to be honest with you. I think that would make it really exciting. Which they did that in 2021 too. So
yeah,
be an interesting thought. TJ, let's go to you next. Do you think the best 8 teams are making the playoffs this season, or do you think it would be a situation where realistically, the top 6 teams in the West are probably deserving of a playoff spot?
Well, I think in every sport, every league, you have this almost every season. There's tons of examples in the past where, say, a 9 and 7 division winner gets in because they were the division leader, but an 11 and 5 wild card team gets booted. No playoff scenario is ever going to be perfect. At the end of the day, you got to look at your schedule and you got to win the games. So in that regard, whoever gets in has earned their spot. It may not be the fan choice or the popular choice, but I kind of like it when a team that's not supposed to get in gets in over a team that was almost almost predestined in the preseason rankings to get in. I think it adds a lot of parity, and it usually adds to a lot of good playoff games. So it's like it in every sport. So yeah, take that as you will.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree, and that's a great point. That's a great point. Cody, what about you? What are your thoughts on the playoff picture? And if you were the commissioner of the IFL, given the chance, how would you change it, if at all?
I would fold the whole league. I'm kidding. When I would think, I do apologize. I cannot get this lump out of my throat. I kind of agree with TJ. I do think with what you have with your conferences and things like that, I mean, that's kind of what you want. I remember Todd Tryon saying in either an Inside the IFL or something along those lines that they're basing the schedules off of travel first and foremost and proximity. It's the reason why you have Frisco and San Antonio playing 3 times, even though they're in different conferences. I don't mind the way the schedule is. Obviously, in a perfect world, it'd be you kind of play home and home against who you have in your conference and then fill out the rest of it with out of conference opponents. But due to travel and obviously, the minor league status that this is, you can call it professional all you want, but we know. For what it's worth, I mean, you just kind of have to go by what the travel dictates. On the flip side, though, I said this way back in February and March when I even started my YouTube channel. I knew the West was going to be way tougher than the East. I didn't expect the 4 teams in the East to be the 4 teams that they were, but you kind of know who the 4 teams were going to eventually be. The thing that gets me, though, as a Quad City fan, it's going to be a first-round bye for Green Bay or Frisco in that first round. And that's just me being critical. You never know what upsets can happen. But the 1 versus 4 in the East, if Quad City gets it, or even if it's Tulsa, Iowa, Jacksonville, who are all mathematically still in, if one of those gets that 4 seed, you just kind of know that team is going to fold. Not fold doesn't leave, but one's going to go. We know that. It's pretty much going out to a Green Bay Frisco Eastern Conference Championship. Meanwhile, just like last year, Northern Arizona upsets Arizona 4 over a 1. That could happen again this year. You could have a 3 versus 4 in the West, and no one would blink an eye and be like, "Oh yeah, cool." That's just how tough the West has been.
Yeah.
As for the commissioner side, I wouldn't mind the best 8 teams getting in, but like TJ alluded to, in other sports leagues, like you look at the NHL, there's teams in the NHL that you only play in the Central Division throughout the playoffs, minus the wild card and stuff like that. What I would kind of do is kind of take a CFL approach, maybe do a crossover or something like that, and that's how you get that extra team in. That Northern Arizona or that San Antonio, whoever, you get that crossover. Sorry, you're out, Quad City.
Thank you. I am glad you said that because that is something that I was going to suggest. I think some sort of crossover rule to where, maybe you set it up in a scenario where, say, you have the 7 and 8 seed and, have a team that's just outside the playoffs in the West Division. Maybe it's a situation where the only way you cross over is if there's a 2 to 3 game win gap between the two. So say you've got a 7 and 11 Quad City team and you've got a 10 and 8 Northern Arizona team, then you let Northern Arizona go to the playoffs or something like that. But I definitely like that idea a lot. And I could also see a scenario where maybe they do go back to the best 8 teams, but I could see that coming back only when the league expands more. And I don't know why I feel that way. It's not really insider information or anything. That's just the way I lean when I kind of give you my gut feeling here. So I definitely think that's something that we could see come down the pike again. Like Chris said, they've done it in the past, so it wouldn't be the oddest scenario in the world. And honestly, I think that might be the best course of action going forward. But no matter what, we're in for a great playoff run. I mean, there are a lot of great teams in the league right now, regardless of what division they're in, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the rest of this season going forward. But we're going to go ahead and get to some IFL transaction news, which, as Cody mentioned earlier, there has been quite a bit of movement with Vegas. There's been quite a few moves with Mass, Frisco, Bay Area, Arizona, Tucson. A lot of interesting moves. And one of the ones that I wanted to get to right away was up in Mass. They brought in a wide receiver, which I happen to know quite well, Dante Demas. He was with the Philadelphia Stars for a brief moment before the UFL merger made the Stars go away. Tyler Hudson has been released, another wide receiver. Calvin Bundage, linebacker, also released. Both high-profile players that are going away. So I'm curious your guys' thoughts, and we'll go to Krish first on this one. Obviously, he's kind of our Mass guy.
Yeah, I think Calvin being released, Calvin is still with the team. Like, he's still around the team. He was at the parade the other day. Like, he's around the team. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back for playoffs, if this is just kind of a roster move, so we can get down under that 26 to 25. Tyler is great. He's a great locker room guy. I like Tyler a lot. I think he's a really good dude. I think he has a bright future ahead. Unfortunately, I don't think he translates to the indoor game as much as I expected him to. I think he's more suited for the outdoor game, and that's fine. Certain guys, that transition is really difficult. So I would love to see Tyler go overseas, the European League or Mexico. I think he would do great things over there. Dante Demas, I'm super excited. He's a route running master. To bring him in with our already loaded receiving core. We got T.O. Redding, we got Hassan, we got Darren Carrington, and now we bring Dante Demas in. That solidifies our receiving core really, really well. The 5 receivers, Isaac Zico might be back in 2 weeks. We have a bye after this week. And then our last game is July 19th, and then we have playoffs. So he still has more time to recover. So I don't want to rush him back because we don't need him for these last 2 games. We're kind of good without him right now. But I want him to come back for the playoffs. So Dante, I think, can take a huge role for us and be that piece that we need on the offensive side for our already loaded receiving core. We only kept 4 receivers active last game, too. So that's an interesting note. We'll probably keep 5 this week just to test out and see how he does. But yeah, no, Calvin, obviously it's hard, right? Like, he's a great player. He led the league in tackles at one point, and he's dominant at the line of scrimmage. But I think sometimes, right, like, players struggle, right? He had a couple, off weeks, and he wasn't really himself. I think he was dealing with the injury as well, talking to him, but I think he'll bounce back. He'll be fine. I just think sometimes you need a break, and then you can come back. I've seen guys that release, come back and do even better. And so I would love to bring him back for playoffs. We got a really good linebacker in there now with Jaden Woodby from Boston College. He's been electric for us, and our defense is our defense right now is as good as it's ever been, like ever. Like, I've ever seen our defense. So I think we are one of the best defenses in the league, for sure.
Absolutely. And then we'll go ahead and talk about a couple moves with Frisco. Frisco lost a handful of players to the short-term injured reserve right before playoffs, which could be obviously pose some issues. Martez Carter, the running back, Desmond Rayford, and Isaiah Coe all hit the short-term IR list. Dukan, I'm curious, with Frisco kind of seeing some attrition here, do you see them potentially having any sort of drop-off, towards the end of the season here?
No, I don't, because they're loaded at DB, so the Kentrell Pierce deal isn't that big of a deal in my opinion, and they're loaded at running back because they got Justin Rankin in there, so it doesn't hurt them that much to have to put Martez Carter on the short-term IR. I think Justin Rankin over the last 3 years is arguably the best running back the Indoor Football League has had. So when you look at those things, I really don't think this hurts Frisco one bit.
I definitely agree, and kudos to their player personnel department has brought in a lot of depth and been able to keep guys there, which I think that's awesome to see. A guy like TJ Edwards, he gets drafted by the UFL, ultimately was basically hopefully done with indoor football, and then he returns to Frisco, and then same thing with Justin Rankin, goes outdoors to the CFL, comes right back to Frisco. It's a testament to how they're treated by Frisco. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming back. So
Sure.
always like to see stuff like that with organizations like that. Let's go to Cody on this one. You talked a little bit about the Vegas moves. I think you kind of glossed over Mikel Cahoon coming back a little bit, but You brought up Justin Collins, Jonathan Johnson, Torian Taylor all being released. They bring in Reggie Henderson, Trayvon Van, and Marquise Lawson at wide receiver and running back. What are your thoughts on these moves overall? And do you see Vegas having any sort of drop off, or is this a situation where it's just reload and keep going?
Yeah, I mean, there might be a little bit of a drop off. I don't have the roster in front of me right now, but if you're losing Jonathan Johnson, Justin Collins, Torian Taylor, and Antonio Wimbush is still on the injured reserve. So you do bring Trayvon Van in, so he's probably going to start right away, unless, I mean, you guys have more of the inside information. I'm just a guy on the internet. But then you're going to bring in two other guys on the wide receiving core, and Marquise Lawson and Reggie Henderson. You're looking at both those guys either starting or one being a reserve. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of raw talent right there. We got Quentin Randolph and CJ Wyndham kind of taking over as the other two wide receivers. Is there going to be a drop off? Potentially. I mean, like I said, you do have that indoor experience with Trayvon Van at the running game. Jerome Johnson has kind of come back into his own after the whole, is he starting? Is he getting benched? He's thrown 2 interceptions, put him on the bench, and put in Jorge Reyna. So it's nice to see him come back in and kind of lead that offense. Is there going to be a drop off? I'm not sure, because you have to look at the other end of San Diego's defense. They have been really good. As I said earlier, they have been really good. Not tops of the indoor football league, but very formidable. And I think if they can get under the skin of the passing game of Vegas and make them very one-dimensional, stop that run game. I'm not saying it's a drop-off, but again, that's probably why San Diego is favored in this game. You didn't really lose much for the strike force. Nate Davis, one-step drops, quick passes, what he does best. We'll see what happens. Yes, they do bring in Mikal Calhoun. He's been off and on the injury report. Is he fully 100% to go? Is this more of a, we need to get that second seed so we can have a home game? I don't know. I'm not here to speculate who's fully injured or healthy or whatever, but for me, it's if he's good enough to play, we'll see how well he does.
Absolutely. And real quick apology to one of our partners, the Huddle Sports Network. I forgot to play this earlier. So we're going to hit a quick commercial, and then we'll come back with TJ's thoughts on Tucson's moves.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
All right, so shout out to the Huddle Sports Network, which has made it possible to put this show and others from our network on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. So if you are one of the viewers that prefers to watch this on TV, you can now catch us on the Huddle Sports Network channel. My son would like to watch it on TV right now, even though he's watching it live. So definitely tune in every afternoon, 2 to 3 p.m. Central Time on the Huddle Sports Network. And you can also catch this show on 502 American Angel Radio every weekend, Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, I believe. But at this point, it's been so long since we set that up, I cannot remember, to be completely honest. But Tucson has made some rather interesting moves at the quarterback position, and it's kind of got me wondering what is going on down there in Arizona. So I wanted to get your opinion, TJ. Kenyatta Allen was signed away from the LFA. We talked about that move last week or the week before, and now he's already been released. So I'm curious, TJ, when you look at the quarterback situation in Tucson, what do you think they're doing down there? I mean, they bring in Kenyatta Allen, they ultimately release him. They bring in Vincent Espinoza over from the TAL. What is going on down there in Arizona?
Full honesty, no idea. It it kind of surprised me with especially this close to the playoffs. I don't know if they're maybe trying to install maybe a new offensive idea, see how it does. Honestly, it kind of perplexed me when it all went down. I think unfortunately for all of us, I'll say skeptics. I think you have to be inside the team to know what's exactly going on. So for me, it's probably just looking to maybe install a new offense, or maybe seeing if there's potentially a better option if for the remainder of the season.
Obviously, this is kind of a big move, so we'll go around the horn real quick. But Chris, what are your thoughts on this move?
You had your offense week 1. You had your offense week 2. You had Malik Mitchell, right? And every week when I see Malik Mitchell sitting in the YouTube chat and posting on Instagram, watching every single Tucson game and commenting, I would be there right now, right? Like, so you have to wonder what went on behind the scenes. Because, Coach Back, he's a really smart coach. He knows all these other quarterbacks he's bringing in, they're not my league. They're not even close to my league, right? He's trying to, Kenyatta's good. Kenyatta's a good quarterback, but, he just went through playing a whole outdoor season. He needs to come back indoors. He needs to adjust. He's not going to get it fully after one game. And not even one game, 2 drives. They benched him after 2 drives. What do you want? You know what I mean? You're not going to get it. And I think they're trying. The one quarterback I've seen popped up in 2 games for them is Quincy Patterson. And Quincy Patterson was with us earlier in the season, and we traded him to Tucson. But Quincy's like that guy for short yardage situations, right? But I see them trying to bring him in and trying to work him in, and I wonder why they just didn't keep him and roll with him, right? If he's going to come in and end up finishing out games, he might as well start a game at this point. They have nothing to lose. So I think Coach Back, if he's still in Tucson, and this is one question I want to bring up too, is when, Dixie Wooten was in Tucson, right? Everyone thought Dixie Wooten was the problem. When Herdis Chin was in Tucson, everyone thought Herdis Chin was the problem. But now Coach Back is in there, and now he's having trouble. So who is it? Really the coaches or is the ownership? Because at this point, I think it's the ownership, right? You're not invested, right? And Kevin Guy partly owns Tucson, right? So I wonder how much of that plays a factor in it too. It's crazy to me. You had Malik had 17 rushing touchdowns in freaking 5 games, and I don't know what they agreed on under the table. I don't know what that agreement was, but whatever it was, they have to honor it. When you agree to something to somebody, you should honor it. And I think they need to go back and they need to look at this season as a complete disaster. It's a complete failure. They're not building for the future. Tucson went from in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs. They were, I believe, 2 games away from a championship berth. In the playoffs, first round, they got eliminated, but it was a really close game. They played Bay Area. They lost by 1 score, and they went from that, and now they're taking 5 steps back. So as an organization, you got to look in the mirror. You got fans. I'm in their fan club on Facebook, and they're talking about not coming to games, how horrible it is, how they even fired their mascot. They even fired their mascot too. So, you look at stuff like that, and as an organization, you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what the future of the team is. Coach Back really does Coach Back even want to stay? I'm sure Coach Back this offseason is going to get a lot of looks, a lot of offers from other teams and IFL. I wouldn't be surprised if that Indy team has already offered him, the AFL, whatever. So you got a lot of thinking to do and a lot of reflecting, but I think it's all on ownership at this point, to be honest. So.
No, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought that up because look at the coaches they've had come through there. Herdis Chin was coach of the year as a coordinator and then as a head coach, back-to-back seasons. Billy Back, great coach, had a lot of success down in Frisco and Carolina, all these other stops. And then you also talk about Dixie Wooten, who, I mean, he's one of the best in the league and honestly should be a head coach right now. So kind of crazy to see all the different coaches they've worked their way through, and it hasn't worked out there. But, I will tell you this, I'm not going to obviously name sources or anything like that. And it did not come from Coach Beck, but he is not signed past this year with Tucson. So I would definitely keep an eye on Coach Beck, because he could be a guy who's on the move to a different team if he sees a better situation available. And I would understand if he made the move after another one season in Tucson. So it'd be interesting to kind of see this coaching market this year, because we could see a lot of names bouncing around this offseason. Any other transaction news that anybody wants to get to before we get into one last topic? Sounds like we're good there. The final topic at hand is one that is probably not a positive subject for us to be covering, but Caffeine, the streaming partner for the IFL, has ultimately decided to shut down after multiple years of service, I guess you could say. I guess their profit margins just aren't working out on their end, and they've decided to kind of walk away. Obviously, IFL's been on YouTube this entire time. So realistically, it's not like the games are going away. It's not like they have to scramble to find a broadcast partner or anything like that. So I really don't think it's going to be a huge effect. But when you guys look at the effect of Caffeine going away, is this a situation where maybe the IFL isn't getting as many outside eyes on the league going forward? Or is this just a drop in the bucket, and the IFL is really a juggernaut in the indoor football world currently? Let's go to Cody first on this one.
It's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Every comment I've seen on message boards, forums, whatever, a lot of people, when Caffeine said that they're shutting down, most people, I never watched it. I always watched it on YouTube, things along those lines. So I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. I do like it from the standpoint that when the higher ups at YouTube decide that the arena music is just too much for them to handle and have to copyright strike them, you can still go find the game on Caffeine until the Indoor Football League brings the feed back up on YouTube. So it was nice in that regard. Always having other outlets that you can go and watch the game at is always good. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I know more exposure is always good, but for all intents and purposes, I don't know if there was any kind of deal that was made, if the Indoor Football League was getting paid by them to put their games on there or anything. I know it's free for everyone to sign up. So anytime you have something free to sign up, you're really hoping for advertisers and stuff like that to kind of keep those profit margins. They just couldn't keep it going, unfortunately. Now, again, I don't know the ins and outs, but ultimately, almost everyone I saw was like, I always watch it on YouTube. So I don't think it's really no harm, no foul, but other people could have other opinions.
TJ, what are your thoughts on Caffeine going away and how it affects the IFL?
I agree with Cody. A lot of people do say, I just watch it on YouTube. And me personally, I always watch games on YouTube. It's just always been there. If anything, maybe with them going away, maybe it'll make the IFL think about, like we were talking earlier with CBS Sports Network, maybe wanting to strike a deal with them just to get on a solid platform. It just depends. There's a lot of things with CBS Network, like they don't have a Nielsen rating. So I don't, so that's kind of turns a lot of sports leagues off. But if I were the IFL, to me, it's not that big of a deal, but I would love for them to see them go out and get another partner, like again, a CBS Sports Network.
Great point there about the Nielsen's ratings. I was not aware of that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Krish, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, if you know me, sports business is kind of my thing, but I think Caffeine, I looked at the viewership numbers about 2 weeks ago, and they said like 40% of the people that watched IFL and Caffeine were from the Asia region, and 20% were from South America. So that makes it really accessible to people in other countries, and it helps grow the game, and I think that's great. I think, obviously, I watch the games on YouTube too, but I think being able to expose more people to your game across the world can generate interest, kind of like what they did with the NFL China. And what I look at, like cricket, cricket doing the World Cup in New York, South America, they're starting to generate that interest for their sport. I think indoor arena football needs to take a similar path where they can start generating interest and then getting more viewership, more fans. I think CBS Sports, like Cody and TJ said, I think that would be great too. Obviously, a high national platform. The only problem is when you do CBS Sports Network broadcasts. I mean, I've heard a couple things like the teams or the league has to pay CBS to come and broadcast their games, and the number is really expensive. I've heard like 40 to 50,000. If that's true, that's a huge expense for the IFL that they can't afford at this time. So I just wonder, they would need to get a national sponsor. So it'd be like have to be like CBS, iPhone, CBS, like sponsored by Coca-Cola or sponsored by something. If they could get that national sponsor, 100%, I would be all in for them to do it. So.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot of money. I mean, obviously that $50,000 range it seems about right. I've heard that number tossed around when it came to the AFL broadcast for the NFL Network. So I would imagine it's similar for CBS Sports as well. My question is, does it have to be a television network to have the same effect that caffeine had? Or could you go to, a DAZN or, one of these other networks that's around that, has been streaming games, has other live sports, stuff like that, and maybe move forward in that ilk. Cody, what are your thoughts on
that? For me, the way that I see it, if you can go on like a DAZN or something like that, what calls to my mind is, and I know it's a whole different realm. I know money is obviously the number one issue here, but when you see things like Washington State and Oregon State are going to be on the CW, the ACC has put games on the CW. You have the Mountain West Conference just signed a deal with True TV. True TV. The only time you watch that is for Impractical Jokers or for like 4 games for March Madness. I mean, if you can find one of these channels, whether it's a Turner, TBS, TNT, what have you, like a CBS affiliate like Sports Network or something, or even if you can go on like ESPN News or something like that. And again, money is a factor. In a perfect world, we would all love this game on ABC or CBS, NBC, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just like, can you find like what you're saying? Can you find one of these other channels where you can get eyeballs? And that's not to say anything bad about caffeine, but having the AFL on CBS Sports Network can be a boon. They've been there before. You're only putting 1 game a year for the Indoor Football League, and I understand why. But if you can find another channel like a True TV or a USA, I mean, the USA has NASCAR. I understand that's a big deal, but at the same time, it's like, can you find one of these other channels that doesn't primarily put sports on it? I don't have a channel in my mind, but I think that's kind of the route you should probably look at. But I'd like to hear what other people say, because again, in a perfect world, I'd love to do that. I just don't know if it's feasible.
Also, one more question before we move on to another person's opinion. Do you think it has to be in simulcast to the YouTube broadcast in order for the IFL to not see a hit? Or is it a situation where you could see them only going out on broadcast television in certain areas?
I mean, you could do both. I don't see any harm with them putting stuff on YouTube. I know when the championship game gets played on CBS Sports, they will have it on CBS Sports only, and then like a week later they will put it on their YouTube channel. So I don't necessarily see anything wrong with that. When the IFL had their deal with Stadium a couple years ago, they did that same thing where they would play the game on Stadium. You could only watch it there for the game of the week, and then like a week later they would have it on the YouTube channel. So I don't think that would necessarily be an issue if they can work out those deals through whatever contracts. But if you can put it up, like I said, on a USA or a True TV, and I know those are big dreams, but if you can do that and get some eyeballs on there, I think it would just be great. Whether it's them, the AFL, whatever, that's the route you probably need to take.
I think that USA suggestion is actually a lot more realistic than people might think. They had the USFL, I believe, a couple games here and there. Maybe Peacock is another streaming service you could look into. They're kind of trying to gain a foothold in the live sports realm, so that could be another one that would draw some eyes, I think. It's very interesting to see how these sports leagues are navigating the the new age of television watching. It's not necessarily where everybody's got cable anymore. We're all on different streaming services, whichever one we prefer. So it's really interesting and kind of how it's affecting all these sports leagues. But same question to you, TJ. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, does it have to be a simulcast with YouTube? And how do you see the IFL proceed?
I agree with Cody. It doesn't necessarily have to be a simulcast as long as the game can be accessed on YouTube sometime during the week if someone wants to watch it. Especially if, I think USA or even True TV is a great option. But a lot of people, just have basic cable. So they wouldn't be able to watch the game. So to have it at least go up on YouTube would still keep those fans from getting a little, angry that, they can't watch the games anymore. But yeah, I definitely think that they should try the avenue of finding some kind of a channel or even just a high quality, well-known streaming app. Because again, a lot of people, I have both basic cable and streaming apps. So, basically, I think if anything else, the AFL showed it early on this season where whatever they do, just make it easy and accessible. Don't make us have to search for it, or else that's going to turn a lot of people off.
Great point. Great point. That is the main and most important aspect for any league to take away from this. Make your games easy to find, and the people will come. I assure you, it's only a matter of time. But Chris, what are your thoughts? Does YouTube always have to be a part of the formula for the IFL, or is there a scenario where you could see them taking games off of YouTube strictly to be on broadcast TV?
No, until we grow it into like I said before, like the national league, like the actual with national sponsors, they always have to be on YouTube. They got to be accessible to the smaller household communities because these streaming services, they get really if it's a paid streaming service, they get really expensive. They start to add up. I got a notification via VYRE Sports Wire, the thing, the AFL. They were asking me to subscribe for the premium subscription. I've gotten 10 emails. I haven't used the platform for 4 weeks. So it gets too much when you start spending all this money on streaming services. So I'd rather just then be on YouTube to be more affordable.
That's a great point. And this is something that I don't really want to spend a whole bunch of time on because it's not really one of the topics for today. But personally, I think YouTube needs to do a better job of themselves, identifying their largest drawers or, things like live sports that they could take and kind of transition and have, say maybe on YouTube and then maybe also on YouTube TV or something like that, give a little bit different audience. It would just be an interesting situation where maybe you can watch creators and or live sports leagues like this level up and kind of make it to the big leagues, quote unquote, to get on TV that way. Just a thought. But any other final thoughts?
Really quick?
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, I just want to kind of piggyback a little bit. I know Massachusetts does this. I think San Antonio, plenty of indoor teams do it, but make it local. Get it on a local channel. When I first started this whole endeavor into indoor and arena football is when Kansas City Brigade were here in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina. I watched their games on Channel 3, the WB, UPN, whatever channel it was. I watched every single game because we did not have cable. I watched the Arena Football League on NBC because we didn't have cable. You had whatever antenna channels you had, those 4 or 5 channels. If you were able to get that and get your local communities to watch that, and I know that Gray TV and the Arena Football League tried that at the very beginning, and I don't know what fell through or whatever. But if you were able to keep it local, and again, I know Massachusetts does it, I know San Antonio does it, and probably a few others do it too. Get those people to come out to the games. Broadcast, advertise as much as you can locally, and get those people out to the games. That way you can get more exposure to say those stands look full. We need to start looking into getting major advertisers here or put this on a big channel, something like that. I know I'm painting with a broad brush, but like I said, from my experiences, everything that I've always watched has kind of just been local and then it's gone to a national level. So if they can somehow carve out a path like that, and I know they're doing it, but you got to get some more teams aboard to try and get some local channels going for other teams that don't already do it in the league.
Great point. Great point. I mean, that's honestly baby steps to be in a national league anyway. I mean, if you grow a foothold in each one of these markets, especially on local TV, then, you're only going to solidify those markets and then in turn solidify the league. So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And as far as the great TV with the AFL, I think that was also a payment related situation. So I think that would be very much on the table for, an IFL that could potentially actually foot the bill for something like that. I don't know what it would cost, though. That is obviously the big sticking point with a lot of these leagues. So definitely think this was a great episode. Any other final thoughts, Chris or TJ?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see this playoff race come to a head and see what teams make it and go all the way. But, I'm excited to see this offseason, right? Like, I want to see what teams are willing to kind of invest and spend up and invest in their teams. Or if, like, a team like San Antonio kind of takes a step back after a disappointing season. So it'll be exciting to see, like, the caliber of players and I'm most excited for free agency after the playoffs. But I'm also excited for us personally, like, what we do. I believe we are a dominating force in the Eastern Conference. I mean, our last 4 home games have been decided by 4 points or less. So I think if we lock in and we do what we do and we play our defense, like I said, it's number 1 in the IFL for a reason. So I believe we'll be back. And I think we can beat Frisco. I think we can beat the Green Bay. So I'm super excited to see what we do. I encourage people to keep an eye on us, for sure.
Just to be clear, by us, he means Massachusetts. Again, you're coaching intern, right?
Yeah, I was that last year, but now I'm just like around the team. But yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you were back in that position. I apologize. TJ, any final thoughts before we get out of
here? Just a friendly reminder that there doesn't have to be any bias. You can watch both the AFL and IFL. It's fine. And there's a lot of good games on. The AFL are in the playoffs. The IFL's wrapping up the season. They're about to start the playoffs. Just enjoy the sport. And if you keep watching, they will come back.
That's a great point. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because there is no reason to have a bias. The perfect example is today. The game for the Southwest Kansas Storm with Salina Liberty is 2 p.m. Mountain Time. No other IFL game kicks off until hours later. So you can actually catch all the games. But on that note, obviously, as you guys can tell, I've got a lot of background noise going on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the promo. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. To our Huddle Sports viewers, thank you for tuning in. And to American Angel 502 Radio, thank you for broadcasting this episode as well. Before I forget, go subscribe to In the Alley on YouTube, and then also go subscribe to Zio Productions on YouTube. Also, Shady Sports Network. Now I have a promo.